I've been getting this question basically anytime I play Humankind or even when I'm just playing Civ, and I figured I should go ahead and just make a video about it. And the question is, should you buy Humankind? That question's kind of complicated. I think if you just wanted like a too long didn't read, too long didn't watch, the answer is yes, but there are some caveats. And before we jump into those, if you do not know who I am Boes. I play Civilization 6 on Deity on my YouTube channel as well as my Twitch stream, twitch.tv/boesthius, where I stream every Wednesday through Saturday, 12 to 4 p.m. Pacific time. And I have a few thousand hours into Civ. I have around 200 hours into Humankind. That also includes the open dev. So I feel like I have a little bit of experience and a little bit of knowledge to portray on whether or not you will enjoy Humankind and come to the conclusion that I have. Now, before we get into the pros and the cons of Humankind, the first thing I need to reiterate, and I feel like I need to shout this out 1,000 times because this is what I did on my stream, is that Humankind is not Civilization. It may look like Civilization. It may have been kind of touted as the Civilization killer. It obviously takes a lot of mechanics from Civilization, as it does for a lot of other 4X games, but it is not Civ. I think going into it, thinking it's going to be Civ, is going to make you hate the game. I will admit, I played about 20 to 30 hours, expecting it to be Civilization, but better. And I completely hated the game. I hated the way that it played. I expected so many things for the game to be different than it is. I basically expected it to be Civilization 6, but with a little few better mechanics. And when I found out that it wasn't, I just absolutely loathed the game, and I didn't want to play it. I was not having fun playing it on stream. And so it took me about basically until now where I more or less no-lifed it and realized that this is just a completely different game than Civ. It's not Civ, and I just need to enjoy it for that. And I do enjoy it, but there are a lot of things to talk about here. And we'll start off with the good before we jump into the bad and outright horrendous. The good. The battle system is amazing. I think this is probably what most people are going to be talking about, and they're rightfully so. If the way that Humankind plays out with the battle system, it breaks down the battles into little tactic-based board games that exist outside the regular board game of Humankind. Whereas in games like Civilization, the battles take on the same board, and your battles kind of exist around the entire world. These exist in their own little biosphere, I guess you'd call them. Where sometimes you can't even interact with the battles from outside of it. This is amazing. I mean, I really enjoy this. I love tactic-based games. Final Fantasy Tactics is my second favorite Final Fantasy. I loved Tactics Ogre. I love Advanced Wars. All of those games were some of my favorite games growing up, and this kind of just emulates those feelings of those games inside of a 4X game. There are some things that we'll talk about the negatives of this later on, but it just absolutely. I love it. I love the way that they've dealt with battle in this game. It is probably like the big bright shining star of the entire game. The atmosphere of the game. I wasn't super into the atmosphere of the game, I'll admit. But after playing it a bunch and after completing a lot of games, I think a lot of my feelings that I disliked about the game early on come from the open devs and not being able to complete the game. So with this, the atmosphere of this game and the music especially is pretty incredible, especially once you hit the industrial era. The industrial era is probably one of it probably is my favorite piece of music in this game. It really sets the tone of transcending and being able to go further with your culture than others, if that makes sense. Everything ties together really well in regards to atmosphere of the game. But that's one of the other key elements of this game that really make it work. The feeling of one more turn. If you don't play 4X games or you don't play strategy games and you don't really know what I'm talking about, but there's a term that has been coined in especially the Civilization community, called one more turn. It basically means that you'll be playing these games and you're just like, oh, I'll play, it's midnight and you're like, oh, I'll just play one more turn, and then after that turn ends you're like, oh, I'll just play one more turn, and then you end up one more turning until it's 5 a.m. and you've played 200 hours of the game later. That definitely is true in this game. There have been multiple times where I've just been sitting there playing this casually, and I didn't even realize that 3 hours have gone by because I've just been like, oh, I'll just, I'll play until I get to the industrial era, and I can, settle a bunch of outposts and settle the new world. So they did a really good job in capturing that one more turn feel and kind of sucking you in very well. And last for me, one of the best things about the game is that the feeling that even if you lose the traditional 4X strategy game, you can still win the overall game with fame. I think it's a really interesting mechanic. It's kind of been known in the strategy realm that score-based victories are probably the worst ways to win the game. Give an example for Civilization. You have to wait until the end of the total turn timer. So if you're playing a 500 turn game, it's gonna take you like 2 days to complete the game, and you just have to wait it out. And so with this, you can still technically quote unquote lose the traditional way. You can lose maybe the space race, or you can lose the domination race. But if you gather enough fame throughout the game, then you can still win overall. And I really enjoy that. I think it's a really fresh take on the 4X genre itself. Potato McWhiskey put it really well the other day, where this game just felt like a big like FU to the 4X genre, being like, this genre has been stale for the last 10 years. Let's introduce something that people really haven't seen before. And it works really well. There are a lot of issues with it that we'll talk about. But I really enjoy that this is just a completely new way to win the game, I guess you could say. So that's really good on Amplitude for doing that. It's really risky, and I know that I was definitely not sold on it in the beginning during the open devs. I was very vocal about how awful I thought this was, but I think they did really well with it. The game is very pretty. I will say that. I love how the game looks. I love that they're, all the different biomes look insanely pretty. I love that the graphics of the game are very good. And it's very visually appealing to look at. I know a lot of people don't like it. I like the fog of war aspect and how it's literal like cloud covers that uncovers with the map. I really enjoy how when you uncover part of the map like rolls up as if it's being unrolled. I really enjoy that. But for the most part, the game is very visually appealing to look at. Now with the good out of the way, I think I can jump into the bad. And I will say I'm not going to talk about the bugs. No, bugs happen, right? We talked with Carl, who was the lead QA, but now he's a junior developer for Axis, and he's given us a little insight in regards to bugs and timing and testing and things along those lines. Bugs will get fixed, like that's fine. Obviously there are some bugs like the infinite turn bug. You can't like embark on a land tile even though you have vision. Causes, there's a lot of really small random bugs like that. Those will get fixed. So I'm not going to include that in the review because I don't think it's fair. It's just something that can be fixed, with a little line of code, and it's not that big of a deal. But I will talk about is bad mechanics as well as unfun things. So I just wanted to get that right out of the way. And with that, let's continue to the things that are bad about the game, and I will try to condense this as much as possible because there are a lot. But the first thing that we'll talk about here is the war support. I will admit I am very heavily biased. I am a domination player in Civilization. I like to just warmonger and go to war with no repercussions. And I will say I do like the idea of war support, and I do like the idea that you have to have enough support to go to war. Crusader Kings does this very well. I really enjoy Crusader Kings. But there are some issues in regards to war support and going to war in general. The biggest one, I think the biggest offender is forced surrender. I think from a gameplay perspective, it is absolutely not fun. And I know a lot of people, I've argued with a lot of people about this, and I still hold the same defense against it, is that they'll say, well, it's not very realistic, in a war back then, if someone was surrendering, you would just you wouldn't be able to go to war anymore, and you'd come to terms and stuff like that. And I think looking at it based on realism makes the game not fun, and if you are making the game not fun for people, then people are going to stop playing. I also think that there are really easy fixes to this. There have been multiple times where I've been going to war. I'm literally about to take the city that I want for them. I only want like 2 specific cities of theirs. And because I crush them so fast, their war support goes to 0. Mine's at 100, but I have not gathered enough war support that I literally can't take anything of theirs. I have to force them surrender. They give me gold, and that's about it. And that just completely makes my war worthless. And now, because I did that, everyone else hates me. And now all I literally have to do is just wait another like 10 turns before I can go to war again and do the same thing over again, and then maybe take 1 city because I crushed them previously. And so now I just have to spend this next 100 turns going to war with the same person, forcing them to surrender, give me 1 city, then doing it again, forcing them to surrender, giving me 1 city because I haven't gathered enough war support. And it just becomes really tedious, and it completely discourages war play for me, which I'm not saying that you have to go to war the entire game, but if I'm going to war for one specific purpose and I can't do what I want in that purpose or it takes me 3/4 of the game to do that, then I think there are some things that need to be fixed about that. Now, the easiest fix from my point of view is that you can continue to, if it gets to the point where forced surrender, you can completely ignore a forced surrender, but you incur heavy, insane grievances, or you like trigger a condition that, like in Civilization 6, a good example of this is emergencies, and there are war emergencies in Civilization 6 where if you incur too many grievances, the AI will come together as a world congress and vote to go to war with you, and they will band together, go to war against you, and to win that emergency, you have to defend the last city that you took from theirs, and they have to take it within a specific time frame. I think that would be fantastic. I think that would be a great fix for this, because how many times, if you want to go back to the realism defense and saying, well, it's not really realistic, how many times have for like one culture just completely overrun another culture, and erased it from history? I think that you can go from that perspective as well. Also, there are times in the game where I just literally all I want to do is kill everybody in the game and go to war and just run them over and win the game, before turn 100. So I mean, there's that. So I think forced surrender is awful, and I think it needs to be fixed. Bad mechanics are going to be the second thing I talk about. Now, I know that war support and forced surrender is a mechanic of the game, but I felt that was one specific one that was just such a big, terrible thing for me to talk about that I had to talk about it by itself. But there are just some straight up bad mechanics in this game. The main one that I think we can all talk about and all agree on is pollution, and I feel like pollution was probably added at the last second, and it either needs to be removed or completely revamped, because there have been so many games where I'm not even at the contemporary era and the game just ends because there's too much pollution. Now, I get the idea behind that, because that's how it is. There's a pollution mechanic in Civilization 6 where the game becomes more difficult to play and can end. But the fact that the game ends so soon is just, it's a bad mechanic. It's a really bad mechanic, and it needs to be either removed or completely revamped. Additionally, I guess, I don't even know if you would call it a mechanic, but I guess it comes down to the mechanics of the game, is there's too much downtime and waiting to just hit next turn. There have been multiple times, I think in every single game, where it's just around like 40 turns or so where it just next turn syndrome, you're sitting there, you have all 5 of your cities working a wonder, you're not at war, and I guess that can that's probably just a fault of 4X in general, where there are downtimes, but with Humankind, it seems like it's more often than not. I don't know if it's because there are a lack of things to do, even though there are a lot of things to do, but a lack of useful things to do. It just seems that, especially in the end game, very, very especially in the end game, where you're getting towards the end of the tech tree, you're at the spot where you've completed, you're at the end game section of it, and you can end the game in X amount of ways. It's just next turn simulator for the next, hour or so, and I think that's just a combination of some of the bad mechanics in the game. Now, I had talked about how much I loved the battle system previously, but there are some things about it that definitely need to be worked on. Some of the ones that I can think of immediately off the top of my head are line of sight. Line of sight definitely needs to be a little bit more clear, and I think some of the rules need to be a little bit more clear. There are instances, for example, where you can shoot diagonally from like the top to the southeast, but you can't from like the top to the southwest, even though there's no difference in terrain, there's no difference in forestry, or I guess forest would be terrain. Units aren't different there. There are just some weird rules around line of sight that aren't very clear. Where some of it just doesn't make sense. The way that line of sight works, I guess, in real life. Maybe having it a little bit more clear, a little more visually clear would help. Or maybe just simplifying a little bit more, because line of sight is probably one of the bigger offenders of battle mechanics. Additionally, dynamic turns with an AI. If it's intended to be where the AI has an advantage all the time, then that makes sense. I don't know if I agree with that. Because I guess it makes sense because the AI can only do so much, right? Because it's AI. But the problem, and this happens basically every single time where I want to have an advantage on the AI, where I move my units up on a ledge, but this is before entering the battle system where I'm on the map, and I go and I'm spamming right click on their army right when I'm getting to the tile in front of them, but even though I'm spam clicking to attack them and get the attacker's advantage, they still, because they are AI, understand what I'm trying to do and attack me first. And since it's an AI, I can compute immediately, and I become the defender immediately, and then I lose the battle. When realistically I would have had the advantage, because that was the whole point. I think that I don't know if you're going to be able to fix that if you're doing dynamic turns. I think that's just a little silly. If it's intended to be like that, and they did that on purpose, so that way the AI has like at least a little bit of advantage of playing against a human player, then I get it. But I think it happens more often than not, and I get a little bit more frustrated whenever that happens. And then an additional thing when it comes to the battle side of it, the battle system, is that they really need to do something about the terrain. More importantly, the visual aspect of the terrain. It is insanely hard to see what is on the map when you're in the battle system. You could tell where a river is, but more often than not, you cannot tell where a forest is. There have been a tile where it's supposed to be a forest, but you can't tell it's a forest because it has one singular tree on it, and the singular tree is like halfway on a tile and halfway off, but it counts as the whole tile as a forest. And I think doing things like that, especially if you're playing multiplayer and you just visually cannot tell what is happening, then that's just bad and needs to be changed. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. So hopefully that gets fixed soon. Another thing is, and it's probably one of the most important ones, and this can actually literally just be fixed. I think it's going to be fixed, at least changed a little bit, is the pacing of the game. The pacing of the game is straight up bad. It is bad. And I don't think it's been fixed since the open dev. I talked about this during the Victor open dev, where the pacing of the game was off, and it still is very off. It's all right up until about the second time you can transcend or ascend, and then after that it just goes completely bonkers off the rails. All you really have to do is pick, like, this is my build order every time. I go Harappans into the Mayans into the Khmer, and then you just pick science-based civs after that, and that's all you need. If you can build berets in every single one of your cities, then you're gonna snowball auto control, and it's honestly absolutely insane. A good example is picking Sweden in the last era, and then all you need to do, because you have so much science, so much growth, so much productivity, your cities are so huge, you just turn on your affinity in every single one of your cities, and you can complete the tech tree. And you literally just complete the tech tree in like a turn, because you have so much science overflow. It's a little ridiculous. So pacing needs to be fixed. It's really, really bad right now. The games end way too fast, and they are supposed to be ending faster. They've talked about that. They want them to end a little faster, but they end way too fast. I mean, I'm sure everyone's seen the Reddit post on the Humankind subreddit where they finished the normal game in 76 turns. Like, it's on normal speed. So on Humankind difficulty, it's a little ridiculous. So pacing needs to be fixed. It is straight up off right now. it makes the game. That's honestly why this is the big reason why I haven't been playing Humankind, because I know exactly how fast I'm going to win and how easy the game is going to be, even on Humankind difficulty after the first 2 eras, because you just outright pace the AI so badly, it's not even fair. And obviously, like, this happens with all 4X games, that you get to a point where the AI can't catch up, but in this, it's not even close. Like, it's not even close. So that's probably the biggest thing that needs to be fixed, and it will be fixed, I'm sure they're looking at it. But from now until it's fixed, I'm just going to shout from the rooftops, pacing needs to be scaled way better. And I think the final thing I'm going to talk about here is, because there are a lot of things that about the game that I dislike, that necessarily, I don't know if they need to be fixed, but tweaked a little bit. And I can go on a lot of them, but I'm only going to talk about this last one here. And it's not necessarily more of like an easy fix, but an atmosphere, a theme of the game, or I don't know, a mantra of the game, if you call it that. In that the game lacks feeling special. It lacks the ability to make everything feel special. Wars don't feel special. Conquering territories don't feel special. Even your wonders don't feel special. Everything kind of feels homogenous, and I think that comes down to the core gameplay of the game, and I think that lends the game to feeling everything feels the same. That comes down to the core mechanic of, changing cultures every single era. There's really you can't tell the difference between 2 AI, even with, the different garbs that they're wearing. You can't tell the difference between, you look at a city, you don't know if that's a Hunnic city, you don't know if that's, a Babylonian city. Even when it comes down to the avatars too of the AI, you don't know who is who. Obviously you can play, you might be playing against Marbazir, or you might be playing against Quill18 or Spiffing Brit, or even ones that you've downloaded. You could be playing against me, you could be playing against Potato McWhiskey. But because the game focuses on what culture is in that era, it'll just say the Harappans have changed how they felt about you, and you don't know. You're like, who are the Harappans? And you look and you're like, oh, that's Potato. Okay. And it doesn't matter. You don't care about it. It doesn't, like, I feel like wars don't make anything feel special either. You're crushing, and all of a sudden it goes, okay, we force surrender. Here you go. Here's one of our territories. And you really haven't accomplished a lot. Even when it comes down to like simple things like wonders. In Civilization 6, I know I talked about in the beginning that this isn't Civ, but this is a mechanic in all 4X games, and Civ has wonders. And when you build a wonder in Civ, it feels like you did something. It feels like, okay, I claimed this wonder, I did it, I built it before someone else did. And there is a little bit of that like pressure, especially if you search and you see someone else building it, you're checking on the status of them, like how close are they to building it. Oh man, I'm only like 4 turns ahead of them, I better chop it out real quick. And when you build it, you get, even though it's like a little time lapse video of it being built, it gives you a little like, video, like a 10-second video being like, bah, 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 here's the fanfare, here's all this stuff. And as a player, you're like, oh, that feels good. I did that, that was me. I did that. They didn't do it. Whereas in Humankind, you claim the wonder, and then you're like, okay, I built it. And then the little pop-up says, it does the little pop-up and it says you built the wonder, and who cares? Like, I don't know. It just doesn't feel special. And I think that just comes down to, like I said before, the core mechanics of the game, the core gameplay aspects of the game that causes these issues, right? It causes everything to feel the same. It causes the whole game to feel and look homogenous. And there's not really a lack of distinction in the game, whereas, in other 4X games, there is, and you can tell exactly when something is special and something isn't. I don't know if that can be fixed. I don't know if that will be fixed. I don't know if it's something that is even fixable, or if they're even thinking about it. That's something that I still feel in the game, where even though I finish, an epic speed game at 250 turns, and I absolutely crush it, and I have 22,000 fame, and the next Civ has, 8,000 fame, or that culture has 8,000 fame, it doesn't feel like I did anything special that game. It feels like I just snowballed out of control, clicked the affinity button, and won, So that's a little bit of a rambly section. That's more of a like a philosophical question, I guess you could say, about the game. But I think that for me, aside from the pacing issue, that is the most glaring aspect of the game. That would be a negative aspect. So with all that being said, what are the conclusions of this video? Would I recommend this video to buy? Yes, but if you are someone who is expecting this to be Civilization, then it's not going to be for you. If you're expecting it to be a new take on the 4X genre, then yeah, then go ahead and buy it. If you played Endless Legend, Endless Space, then you're going to recognize how this game plays. You may even recognize the faults in this game as things that happened previously in previous games and skip out on it. Would I recommend waiting until the next big patch comes through or maybe a DLC? More than likely, yes. I am probably not going to play until the next big patch comes out because there are some just straight up obvious balance issues that I mentioned before that need to be taken care of. But I think overall for whether or not you should buy this game, I would say yes. It's a good game. You can easily, and I think the area is you can easily get like 60 to 80 hours out of this game and make it completely worth your while just by playing it a couple days out of the first week that you got it, and you'll thoroughly enjoy this game. Are there some issues with it? Yes. That's a big thing with every single 4X game. I mean, Civilization 6 Vanilla was awful when it came out, and now with the Gathering Storm and New Frontier Pass, it's my favorite Civilization game. The same thing happened with Civ 5, and until Brave New World came out, it wasn't that great either. So I'm sure that the further DLC and or patches that are going to come out are going to make or break this game. But I think for now, I would suggest getting it. I just think, and I said it before, and I'm going to say it again, don't expect it to be Civilization. Expect it to play like its own game, and go into it thinking with that mindset, because if you don't, then you won't enjoy it. But overall, that's Humankind. That's my experience with it. I will still continue to play it. Like I said, I'm not going to put any content out on it, I don't think, until the next big patch comes out, because it's just kind of not fun right now for me. But if you have any questions, if you had, I want to hear your thoughts on it. I want to hear what you have to say. Please leave your thoughts in comments in the questions below, or in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, thumbs up, all that jazz. You know what to do. And if you aren't subscribed, feel free to. It's one of the easiest ways to support this channel, and you get to know when all my videos go out. But with that being said, thanks so much for watching, everybody, and I will see you in the next one.